All right, welcome everyone. I'm glad you could make it to this presentation. Now, some of you may know me because you've had a one-to-one session with me, or I may have called you for a follow-up or regarding a query that you've had. Or you may have been at last week's webinar on estimating. Now, by the way, a recording of that webinar is available for those who missed it or want to watch it again. And we are recording this one as well. So look, we're just waiting a few seconds for some others to join us. And hopefully we'll get a few more joining in by the time I've done this introduction. So as a short intro, my name is Karen Tenbrook. I'm a Customer Success Manager at Buildxact. My role and my goal is to ensure you succeed, to help you use Buildxact to its full potential. I've been with the company for around 18 months, and in that time I've seen a massive growth in the company. Now, when I joined, we had a team of around 10, and now there's over 40 of us. With that increase in resources, you see a massive increase in the quality, advancement, and the features of the product. So that brings me to today's objectives. We will be going through the features of the job management module today, as well as looking at some tips and tricks you may not know, new features that have recently been introduced, and shortcuts which can help to streamline your workflow. Now, a lot of this stuff you may already know, but it's a great way to recap that knowledge. So I'm sure that you'll all leave with some tips and ideas that you didn't know. So look, we do welcome queries, so please feel free to type them into the chat field at the bottom of the screen. I've got my colleague Dustin on hand, and he's going to help me to attend to those queries at the end of the session. Now, I will try to cover as many of those queries as I can today, but if there are any that I can't get to due to time constraints or complexity, I will try to touch base with you afterwards. So let's get started. Now, just bear with me a sec while I bring up my Buildxact screen. All right, so look, to get started today, the first thing I want to cover off is this toggle button at the top of the screen here. And you may have heard me talk about this in the last session that we had. Now, this toggle bar is allowing you to toggle between the new Buildxact screen layout. And if I just toggle this, you'll see it's the old that's the new one, the old Buildxact screen layout there. So look, eventually we will be moving to the new screen layout. So what I recommend that you do is try and toggle onto this new screen layout and get used to this because eventually we will be moving permanently to this new screen layout. At this point, if you are using this and you lose anything, you can still go back to that old screen layout that you're used to find what it is you're looking for. Now, some of you may have lost this orange banner at the top with the toggle button in it. So what you want to do is you just want to log out and then log back in again, and that will bring that orange banner back up again. Now, I know some of you are trying to refresh the screen to try and get this to come back up, but you actually do need to log out and log back in. So for those of you that were here last week for the estimating webinar, you will remember that I was doing an estimate for Jim. And Jim was so impressed with this estimate that he's decided to go ahead with the job. So that is the estimate that I'll be converting to a job today and then running through some of the tips and tricks around job management. But before I do that, I actually want to go through the accounts integration because this is an important part of the job management feature. Now, integrating your accounting, if you've got a compatible accounting package, which is Xero, MyOb or QuickBooks, if you have one of these compatible accounting packages, the integration is actually really simple once you know how to do it. So what I'm going to do is take you through that just so that you understand what's required. So the first thing you want to do is find your compatible accounting package and then just click connect. What it's going to do, it's going to prompt you to log into the system if you're not logged in already, and then it's going to come up with this pop-up asking you to allow access. What that's doing excuse me, it's allowing Buildxact to access your accounting package to read all your account codes. So it takes a few minutes just to read those account codes, and then it will pop back into Buildxact. And then you'll end up with this screen here. In this pop-up, it is going to ask you for a few things. So the first thing here is you'll see some tick boxes. Now, basically, all you're doing is you're syncing this to choose which account would you like all your expenses to go into, and which account would you like all your income to go into. So when we say expenses, these are all the received purchase orders that you've created in Buildxact. Now you'll see under here, you have an area where you can choose the accounts. If you click this, it brings up a pop-up, which shows all the account codes from your accounting package. And this is where you choose which account would you like that to go to in your accounting package. There is a tick box here, because at the moment you can only choose one expense account. Now this whole integration does work on a hierarchy. So there is a couple of hierarchies in choosing those account codes, and this is the first hierarchy. You have the ability to choose one expense account, or if you have, maybe you've got an expense account set up for suppliers, an expense account set up for contractors. So you tick this box, gives you the option to have two. So I actually have a suppliers expense account in here, which is called materials, and I also have a contractors expense account, which is already chosen, but normally you'd have to search for that and choose that account. The second thing I want to do is now choose which account would I like all my income to go to. So that's all invoiced, all the customer invoices that you send out. So I click on the drop down and I want it to go into my sales account. The other thing you'll notice is your default invoice status. It's always set at draft, and we do recommend keeping it at draft, because this allows you to make any amendments if you need to before it gets reconciled in your accounting package. Also, if you need to make any changes, it's just easier to do in a draft status. Now, underneath here, for those that use Xero, you'll have the ability to set up tracking categories in Xero. What that allows you to do is to track on a job-by-job basis in your in Xero. So if you've got tracking categories set up, I have one. It's called Job ID in Xero, so I'm going to choose that. And that's pretty much it. As soon as I hit save and close, that's your accounting integration set up. Now you'll see there's a blue button here that says nothing to sync. So when you do create those instances in Buildxact, purchase orders that are ready to be synced over, and any customer invoices, you'll see there will be a sync button here with a number in it. That's the amount of items that are ready to sync over to your accounting package. So nothing is automatic. You still need to tell the system to push those things over. It's just a little backstop, just to make sure that everything's okay before you do send it over. All right, so now what we want to do is let's have a look at that estimate that we did for Jim. And he's decided he wants to go ahead with that job. So what I'm going to do in the first instance is I had actually already created a job from this, just to have a bit of a play around. So just to recap something we went through last week, which is the ability to copy estimates. So I'm actually just going to create a copy of this, but this is a great way for you to, if you're actually ever doing a project in the future and you've done one in the past that's been really similar, you can actually rather copy a project that you've done and just update it for your new project. So in this instance, I'm going to actually tick the boxes down here to copy the entire thing, but obviously if you're creating this for a brand new project, you probably won't want the measurements or plans. You will want the categories and items and maybe the specifications, but the rest of it you won't want. But I'm going to copy over everything. So I'm going to create a brand new estimate with this. It should open up into this estimate where I can update all these details if this were a brand new project. So as I said, Jim is happy with this estimate. He wants to go through and we're going to go ahead with this project. So I'm going to click this button at the end here, and this estimate says create job. When I do that, a little pop-up appears to the left, and there are some fields in here which are really important. So I'm going to go through those. Now, the first one is it picks up all the items, all the detail from the original estimate, but down here you've got the expected start date. So what you can do is update this to the date that you expect this job to start. Now, underneath here, this is actually really important. You want to choose your invoice method. Now, there are three options in here. You've got contract price, which does it in stages, cost plus, where you can add your margin, and also you've got completion percentage. Now, completion percentage is like progress claiming, and if you have retentions held against you, this is the invoice method you would choose. I'm just going to choose contract price. because that's the most common method. So I'll just go through that method there. And then it's really important that you do choose this first, because this is the point where there is no going back. So if you haven't chosen the correct invoice method and you click OK, there is one point where you can't go back. You will actually have to create a copy of that estimate and start again. So it is now converted into a job, and you'll see there are some tabs at the top of this job, very similar to the tabs that are in the estimate. Now, actually, I haven't changed this to the new screen layout, so I'm just going to do that. So you will see that's the difference between the old screen layout and the new screen layout. You still have the same tabs, but they look slightly different, more user-friendly. Now, you'll see in this job, there is a little message at the top here that says the estimate has not been accepted. Now, that is, what that's saying is this estimate can still be edited. And this is useful if you are working on an estimate or a project, and you may not be finished with the estimating yet, but you're fairly certain you're going to win that project. So you want to get on with the scheduling. You might want to do some purchase ordering. You might also want to invoice your customer. The only thing that's not, that can't be used in this job at the moment is the variations, because there's no lockdown cost to do any variations on. So you can do all those tasks in this job. When you are ready to lock down the estimate costings, when you've agreed on the price, you can just click here to accept the estimate. Now, there is a little pop-up that shows up just to let you know that that estimate will be locked and that you won't be able to add any more to it. And then you click confirm. And then that then makes all these tabs up here functional. All right, so the details tab of the job looks very similar to the details tab of the estimate, and any documents that you'd added in the estimate and any notes will flow through to the job, and you can continue adding here. And once again, what that means is any documents you add to this project, you can then email them out from this project if you put them in here. All right, so the next tab I'm going to look at is the schedule tab. So in the schedule, you'll see there are some items in the schedule here. Now, these have come through because I hit the T button on some items in the estimate, and they have flowed through to this job schedule. So what you'll see here, these are actually the header or cost category names of the sections. I can't actually do anything with those. If I try and grab those and move them around, I can't do anything with them. So what I need to do is expand them. So there's a toolbar at the top here which allows you to expand or collapse those fields. So I hit expand, you'll see that there's all these items underneath here. These are the items that I can move around in the schedule. So for instance, I could just take these here and I might move them around, say that's starting on that date, and so on and so forth. But I think before you do that, the first thing you actually want to do is you could come up to the cog icon here. There's a lot of tools in here that we are going to go through. The first thing you want to do is actually set the start date for this entire project. So you could click on this, it brings up a calendar, and you can just choose the date that this starts. It will adjust that schedule to begin with. And then what you'll do is you'll come in and you'll move those items around based on that start date. What I can also do is I can hover over the edge of this and I can make this more than one day, expand these out. Now you'll see that when I move these items, they actually move independently. So they're all moving by themselves. They will expand out the category names as well to cover all those sub items. So at the moment I'm moving those around individually, but you can set up dependencies. So the first dependency is here, it's in this cog icon, automatic dependencies. Now if I switch that on, what that does, if I now move that one item, is actually going to move, it will move everything underneath it. This is really handy if you have started a project and you've gotten a certain way through it. Then for some reason the rest of the project is laid off for maybe weather conditions, budget or time constraints. What you can do is grab an item in here and move it, and it will move everything underneath it, and everything above it will stay where it is. Now there are other dependencies that you can set up, individual dependencies. So first of all I need to switch that off because you can only have one or the other. So I could set up an independent dependency between some items. So if I hover over this little dot here, I can draw a line from the beginning of this dot, the end of this dot to the beginning of this dot here. It has created a dependency between these two items. But it only works one way. If I move this item along anywhere, it will grab the item that's attached to it and move it as well. But it only works one way. If I grab the item underneath and move it, it doesn't move what's above it. So that's great if you've got just particular items that are dependent on each other. The other thing that we can do from here is we can actually put some progress on these items. But before I do that, I just want to show you the effect that putting some progress on the items, what that has on your jobs. You'll see in the jobs, if I go to my list of jobs, you'll see that it brings up that sub-menu. And in that sub-menu for the jobs, you'll see that it gives me a list of all my jobs and it will tell me what statuses those jobs are in. So I've got all jobs, I've got 4, not started, I've got 4. So the schedule is a way to actually get these jobs to move through these statuses. Now I have a lot of customers saying to me, hey Karen, why is my job not going into in progress and completed? I've finished that job, it's fully invoiced and fully paid off and it's still sat there as not started. Well, the reason is because nothing's been done on that schedule. So if I open up this job again and I go and expand these, and if I put a little bit of progress onto one of these, so this is the progress bar, it works in a traffic light colors. So orange means it's in progress and green means it's completed. But if I put a little bit of progress on this or complete one of these sections, it'll mark this job as being in progress. So if I now go back to my list of jobs, you'll see now I have got all jobs 4, 3 are not started and 1 is in progress. So that is how you get your jobs to move through the statuses. The other thing that we can do is once we have completed the entire job, instead of going through and individually putting statuses or progress on these individual tasks, you can just go into the cog icon and you could mark the job as completed. And what that will do, it will mark all of these as being green to say completed, and it will move that job in the status bar to completed. The other thing that we can do is we can add tasks. So look, these tasks have come in here because I added them from the estimate. Now, we can also, there are other ways to put tasks into this schedule. So maybe you haven't hit the T button in the schedule button. These items have come from the schedule because I hit the T button. Maybe you're not going to hit the T button at all. If you come in here, this would be completely blank. There'd be nothing in here. What you can do is hit this plus button up here, and that will add a new task. So I might create a task in here called framing. Click the save button. What that does, it adds it to the bottom of the list. And I could then add a subtask to this. So it acts pretty much the same as these, where you've got your header and some subtasks. I can add a subtask by hitting the plus button. And I might say the first subtask on this is the trusses. Click save. It's going to add as a subtask underneath. Now I can also reorder these because this item is at the bottom of the list. It probably belongs somewhere closer up the list. So to do that, you just grab it and move it up and hover it over the item you want it to replace. And that's how you can reorder your items in here as well. If you find it's doing what it's doing for me at the moment, if you find it's not moving up the list, it did that time, but if it doesn't, you just need to hit refresh on your screen and that will refresh the schedule and allow you to do that. So look, there are 3 ways that you can get your schedule in here. So one is to hit the T button against your estimate items. The second way is to hit the plus button to add your items. And the third way is to have a combination of both, which is what I now have. I've got a combination of items from the estimate and new items that I've added. Now, the other thing that you can do is everything I did in this schedule, I can actually do from a little label. So I can click on each of these individual tasks in here and I can click edit. It brings up a label where I can do everything I just did in the schedule. So I could change the start date. So I might want to put the start date on this item. I could adjust the duration. So it's a few days. I could just hit the plus button or I could just delete that and type it in. Or if it's going over a few weeks or a few months, I could rather just go to the calendar and then put in a date. That might be easier. Now, there's a progress bar here too, so I can either hit the minus or the plus button to indicate the progress, or I can just once again just type it in there, how much progress has been put on. I can also assign this to contractors or suppliers. So I could put a contractor in here, and I could set up a reminder. So I could set up a reminder that goes maybe a day before this task is due to start, put a reminder in there, and they will get either a text message or an email. It's up to you, or both. Depends on what you'd like them to receive. And I can add some optional notes in here as well to send with that reminder. Click save, and you'll then see that contractor or supplier's name against that item, so you know you've assigned someone. The other thing that you can do is you can set up a template. So maybe you've got a type of a schedule that you want to use over and over and over again. So you can do that by setting up all your items in here, and then going to the cog icon, and then going down to save as template. Now you can have as many templates as you want, so you might want to name it after the type of work that it's for. Now, what I recommend you do is when you see pop-ups coming up in Buildxact, don't just click save and close or OK. Just read what is going on so you know, you understand what's happening in these pop-ups. So what it's going to do, it's telling you what it's going to save. So here's what's going to be saved with the template: all the parent and child tasks, the duration that I've put on those tasks, any lag days between the tasks, reminder settings, notes, those resources that I've allocated, and if I've got dependencies. Then I click save and close. And then the next time I want to use this template, what I might do is come in here. I might decide that I do want to add a few extra things to the template. I can add those with the plus button or click the T button against the items in the estimate. And then I want to add my template to that, or this could be blank and I want to use my template. Click on the little cog icon, and you'll see at the bottom of the list here all the templates that I've set up. So you click on the template you want to use, and once again, make sure you read the pop-up before you click apply. Because it's asking me here, what do I want to do? Do I want to remove these existing tasks? So if I had added some extra tasks, I would choose to keep them. So add my template after the existing tasks. Do I want to change the start date in this? I can do that here. And then do I want to keep the reminders that I set up, the notes that I'd added, the contractor or supplier, and any dependencies? So you can pick and choose what you want to keep and then click apply. So what it's going to do, it's going to add under those tasks I'd already added because I chose to. In this case, it has just it hasn't duplicated because it's exactly the same as what was already in there. Oh, actually, no, it has. So what all it's done, sorry, it has is collapsed them all again. So if I expand them, you'll see my schedule in there now is duplicated. There's a lot of other functions in this cog icon. You can print a Gantt chart. So you get a choice of how you want that to look. And that generates into a PDF format. And what it's going to do, it's going to print the Gantt chart based on the view you have here. So if you'd collapsed all these items, it would only show the headers, but because I've expanded everything, it's going to show it all those items expanded. So there is there on your Gantt chart. What I can also do in the cog icon is I can choose to print a job task list. So this might be a better format based on who you're sending this to. It's going to show a list of the tasks with the start date, the end date, and the progress on it, and if it's been allocated to anybody. And you can also email that. You can choose to exclude your weekdays in the calendar. You can set up non-working days. So if you click on this, a calendar shows up where you can put all your public holidays in for the year. All right, so the next step after scheduling, what we want to do is now we're going to work through to the next tab. Now these tabs are your purchase orders. This is going to show you, this purchase orders tab is going to allow you to create any purchase orders and view any purchase orders that have already been created, and same with work orders. So now, just so you understand the terminology in Buildxact. Now, normally in the industry, we think of purchase orders as being for material and work orders as being for subcontractor labour. Now, in Buildxact, it's a little bit different. Purchase orders are what we use that terminology for any external costs. So this will actually be any subcontractor labour as well as materials, because purchase orders are what is going to push through to your accounting package. So you'll want to factor any subcontractor labour in there as well. Now, this one, work orders, this is for internal costs, because these will not push through to your accounting package. So this could be if you have any of your own staff, and also if you're using any of your own items. So perhaps instead of hiring items, you're going to use your own gear, but you'll want to factor those costs in against the job. So when you create a work order, it will not push through to your accounting package. All right, so now let's go to the actual costings tab. This is where you'll see what was converted from the estimate. So you'll see there are some categories in here. These are the categories from the estimate which have value against them. So if I go back into this estimate, you'll see the estimate costings tab. For those that were here last week for the estimating webinar, you'll remember that I had a whole bunch of categories in here that I was adding items to. Now, the only categories that come through to the job are the ones that actually have value on them. So there are a lot of zero value categories that haven't pulled through. So just so you understand why it looks a bit different to the estimate I was doing last week. So we come back through to the actual costings, and we've got these categories in here, and you'll see there are 3 columns here. Now, what these are, this column here is the estimated costs. This here is your actual costs, and over here is the variance between the two. Now, at the moment, these are all sitting at 0, the actual costs, because we now need to apply our actuals to these items. So I can expand this field here, and what I can do is there is different ways that you can add your actuals to your costing items. Now, the first one, for those of you who are using something like HubDoc or Receipt Bank with Xero, you really don't want to duplicate the whole purchase order process. So rather than creating that purchase order in Buildxact, what you can do is continue using your Receipt Bank or HubDoc to capture all those details in Xero. And then what you want to do is come back into Buildxact. If you click this edit pencil, it'll actually allow you to update this actual totals field. But you want to be really careful with this, because if you have a lot of people using the system, you have got no record of where those actuals have come from, because it's literally going in there and someone is actually able to manually manipulate that field. So we do recommend that you would use the purchase order process to get your actuals into the system. Now, to do that, what you want to do is actually find the item in here that you want to put your actuals against, and we're going to create a purchase order against that item. So for instance, I'm just going to use this one here. When you tick the box against any of these items, Buildxact at the bottom of the screen says, what do you want to do with that? So what I want to do is I want to order that item. So click that, and it opens up into a purchase order. Now, the only mandatory field in here is to choose your contact. So I'm just going to use one of my suppliers. And in here, you'll see it has already picked up the item, because I ticked the box against it. It has picked up that item. But I might say, you know what, I estimated it to be about 28, but I think it's going to be 25. So that's what I'm going to order. That's what I need for this job. So I can add that there. And then at the bottom of the screen, because I've already picked up my the contact I'm sending this to, I've got my item. I can then click Save and Send. And at this point, it is actually going to come up with another little pop-up where I've got the ability to, it would automatically generate with that contact's details if they're in there, or their email address, but I could also add other attachments here. So anything that was in the details tab of this job, I could add if I wanted to. And then I would just click Send. Now, with this here, this purchase order has been created, and I can tell that because there's a little tick box against this item now in the ordered column. And when I click on that, it's going to be the related purchase order sitting in a sent status. You'll see at the moment that this purchase order is, it has not added to our actuals yet. The way to get our actual costings in here is to receipt in this purchase order. Now look, the best way to actually access this purchase order is through the tabs on the left, because you won't be sat here in this job waiting for these purchase orders to come in. So we go to our jobs tab, and in the jobs tab, you see a sub tab that says orders. So in this orders tab, you'll see here that my order is here. So you'll get your supplier or contractor invoice, have the order number in it, and you can search for that order up here. Now you notice on this order, on the far right of this order is a little blue button, and this allows you to add your invoices or receipts. So your reference number, that's a mandatory field. So that's the invoice number that comes from the supplier or contractor invoice. Now that is a mandatory field because this will push through to your accounting package to allow you to easily reconcile this. Now for those that are partially invoicing, you can do that as well. So maybe you only have received part of your goods. So I might say for this one, I have received half, let's say around half of it. The unit cost may have changed. So all I'm doing is I'm updating these fields to what I actually got. This is showing me what I ordered, and now I'm updating this to what I actually received. I'll scroll to the bottom, and there are two buttons down here. I can part receive this, or I can fully receive this. Now, because I'm still expecting more, I'm going to part receive it. What that does, it changes the status of this to part received, and I still have a button here to continue invoicing against this. So now I'm just going to go back into that job. Now you see shortcuts all over Buildxact. Where you see blue writing, click on it, something will happen. This is the job, the shortcut to the job. So I've clicked on that, it will open up the job. And then we will go to the actuals costings. And we'll see what receipting in that invoice has, receipting that purchase order, what that has done to the costings. So you'll see over here on the far right, we now have some actuals against this item. So it's showing me that my actual quantity that I receipted in was 15, and it's got my actual total there. You'll see on the right here, it is giving you a bit of a breakdown. It's saying in green, you've only used 50% of your budget, so you're on track. So now it might be a few weeks or a few months later, and I get my next supplier invoice. So once again, I won't be sat here in this job, so I will go back to my jobs tab, go into my orders, and you'll see over here, I can receipt in my next invoice. Click on that, put in the new reference number, and then I'll put in what I received, and I'll just say it is showing me here what I'm still expecting, but I ended up using more than what I estimated for, so I'm just going to put that in here. I'll put in what I actually received. I'm expecting 10, but I actually used 11 for whatever reason. I went over budget. Now, because this is the final invoice, I'm not expecting any more, I can click and save as part received. Oh, sorry, click and save as received. You'll see now, because I've done that, it's locked it off. There is no more, the blue button has disappeared. I can't receipt in anymore. So let's have a look at what happened to that job from receipting in that invoice. You'll see now over here, it is telling me I've now used $260, and I've now used 90% of my budget. So that's how doing purchase orders and invoicing them in will add your actuals to the job. Now let's say there are some extras that you hadn't factored into this particular estimate. So there's some items that you need to factor into this job. And you will need to carry the cost of those. The way to do that is to create a brand new purchase order, because we can't factor it in against any of these items in here. So I'm going to go up to this purchase orders tab. So if we go to the purchase orders tab, you'll actually see any purchase orders that have already been done. So previously this was blank, and then I created that purchase order against that item, and that's why it's sat here in the purchase orders field. I'm going to create a brand new one for those miscellaneous items. And I'm going to choose a contractor here. So it just needs some miscellaneous items from 1 to 10. And you'll see here, this is blank, so I now need to add this item. So I'm going to put in my miscellaneous, and I'll just put in a value for that. Then you'll see here, it's really important, this field here on the far right, the actuals category. So I need to factor in here which category from the job do I want this miscellaneous to go into. So I'm just going to say that it's come out of the plastering, from the plastering section. So then I've actually already done this order, and I just want to factor it into this job. So I can just go straight up here to the receipt button. I don't need to send it out because it's miscellaneous items I've already ordered, and I just want to factor it into this job. So I can just go straight up here and mark this as received. It'll bring up the little pop-up. I put in my invoice number, and of course that's what I ordered, so I can just leave it at that, and I can mark the order as received. And then click Save and Close at the bottom. Now I've got 2 purchase orders in here. If I go back to the Actuals Costings tab and I put that into the plastering section, if I go down to that plastering section, you'll now see there's an extra item in here which has got no estimated cost against it, but it does have an actual cost. And here, up here, I can see the variance. So once again, it's telling me how I'm tracking on this job. So factoring in any extras there. Now, work orders, as I said, this is to factor in any internal costs. At the moment, I don't have any work orders in here. So what I'm going to do is I had one of my technicians go out labour on one of these sections. So let's just say he did some labour, some brickwork labour. Once again, I'm just going to tick the box. It's the exact same process. I'm just going to order the item. And then what I want to do at the top right, I want to make sure that I change this from a purchase order to a work order. And then what it's going to do, it's going to ask me who did this job. So Bob, the builder, he's my employee and he did this job. So I'm going to come down here and it's telling me at the moment, this is what I have factored in for the labour. And I'm just going to say that at the moment, he did 8 hours on this job and it was $60 per hour. And then I'm going to come up here, I'm going to change the status to completed. When I do that, it does give me a little warning just to make sure that I have put in what he actually did. So did you complete what was estimated? And then I'll just hit Save and Close. And so it's the exact same process as completing a purchase order, but that work order does not go through to your accounting package because you'll pay your staff through payroll. So you don't want that creating a purchase order in your accounting package. But you'll see once again, it has factored in that work order and has got the actual total, and it was telling me how I'm tracking. And if I go to the work orders tab now, you'll see any work orders that I've created in here also. All right, just bear with me a sec. The system has decided to refresh itself. All right, now I just want to show you also how you can do a variation on some PC or PS items. So if I go into the section here, you'll see that this PC item that came through from when we did the estimating, and I hit the P button against those items to nominate that it was a prime cost item. So now we're going to do a variation on this because the customer has changed their mind. They want to go for a different product. So the way to do that is to actually tick the box to the left, once again at the bottom of the screen. What do you want to do? I want to do a variation on that item. So in here, you'll see what it's done. It has picked up the original item, but it has minused it off. It's taken that item off. So what I want to do is now add the item that they do want to use. So it's still bricks, but it's a different type. And what I want to do here is I'm going to use the same amount. So what I can do is just go to the calculator and it'll pick up, actually this one won't in this case, but I can just put in the quantity. And I'm going to say that the item that they chose is actually $30 per metre squared. And it's really important here that I actually add the markup because it doesn't pick up the markup from the original estimate. So I need to put some markup against this item, really important. And the other thing here, very important, I want to put this back into the category that it came from. Now, if you don't choose an actuals category against your variations or your extra purchase order items, it will create a random category and put that item into it. So I want to make sure it goes into the same category. So I just put that in there. And if I want to add this to the timeline, I can do that. So I can add this to the schedule by just hitting the T button, same as I did with the original estimate item. Now what I want to do is I want to send this to my customer for approval. So I hit save and send, a little pop-up appears and their email address should populate in here. And I can send any attachments and then I would send that. So I now have a variation out against that item, but that won't show up in here yet because we need to make sure that that variation gets accepted first. So if we go to variations tab, you will see my variation in there, and at the moment it's sitting in the sent status. So now my customers come back to me and said, yep, that's great, I'd like to go ahead with that, that's fine. So I click open that new variation. To get this to add to the costings tab, I actually need to mark this as accepted. So mark this as accepted, save and close. And now if I go back to my actual costings, I look in this category, I've got a couple of new items in here. So I only had 3 items to begin with. Now I've got 1.5, 1.4 and 1.5. This is the original item being removed, and this is the new item that's been added. So this is a way that you can keep track of any of those variations in these categories. Now the other thing I want to show you now is how to do a variation for any of that extra work that the customer has asked for. So you've got your variation in here for your PC or PS items. Now we're going to create a variation because my customer has asked for a carport. So I'm going to put that item in here. So because the new variation, I need to add the item in. I'm going to say that it's $10,000 for that carport. Once again, I need to make sure I put markup on this because it's not going to pick up the markup from anywhere else. It's not going to pick it up from the original estimate or any other items. Then the actuals category. Now in here, I could choose to put this extra variation for this extra work into one of the categories that already exists in the job, or I could create a brand new one. And I think I'm going to do that because I want to track my variations separately. So I could just free type something in there. And then I could add this once again to the job schedule. I'm going to also once again send this off to my customer for approval. And let me just check that again. Okay, so there's my variation there. Sitting in a pending status, I've sent that to my customer and he's responded saying, yep, that's fine. I need to open that up. Once again, I need to make sure that I accept that for it to add to the actuals. Click accepted, save and close. Now, if I go back to the costings tab, now you remember I had 4 categories in here. I've now got a 5th category called variations. And in that variation, it now allows me to add my actuals to these variations and just track them separately from the job. Okay, so the last step in here is invoicing your customer. So really simple, all you need to do is click the plus button to start adding your invoices. So I might, my first stage is actually the base stage. So it's a mandatory field to put the description in, and then my claim amount, base stage, I'm just going to say it's 10% on that. Now in these invoices, I can choose to add my variations, or I could just choose to do these variations separately. You just tick the boxes against the variations that you'd like to add. At the bottom, I'm going to click Save and Send. And when I do that, this pop-up appears and I can just choose to start sending invoices or an invoice with a statement attached. Click OK, opens up into this new pop-up again, which will populate with your customer's details. And then you just hit Save and Send. So now I have got one invoice in here and I can just continue invoicing in the same way. And I can just create all my invoices that way. And what you'll see then is you're creating a list of invoices. So at the end of this, when you have your list of invoices, what you can do is you could maybe want to set these up as a template, because this is the way that you do your invoicing. Rather than having to set this up every single time, you could go to the cog icon and you could save this as a preset. And then the next time you come into this, into a new job, rather than having to set these up from scratch, you can just go to the cog icon and generate that preset. That's at the bottom, it will appear at the bottom of this list. So the other thing that you can do in here also, really important, you want to manage your payment terms. Now at the moment there is a script that's been set up by Buildxact. You can update this to read what you would like it to read, and also maybe put your bank account details in there, and then you can then, that will then appear on the invoices that you send out. So look, these cog really go back to the cog icon in the actuals costings tab, because there's a few little tools in here that I want to go through. So in the actuals costings, where you've got your estimated price and your actuals, it's going to show you on the screen your actuals versus your budget. But in here, you've got the ability to actually print off your estimated costs versus your actuals. Now what this is, estimated versus actuals, are those purchase orders that have been receipted in. You've got another report down here, which is estimated versus committed. Now, these are all the purchase orders that have been sent out but not been receipted in yet. So maybe you want to generate this as an Excel rather than a PDF. Up to you, because maybe you want to adjust some of the data in there. So if you generate that report, you'll see, you come down, you'll see there's some columns in here. It's showing you the estimated, the committed, and then the variance. And then if you, as I say, in an Excel, you can amend that data if you need to, or you can print it off in a Word or a PDF. Okay, so look, that's pretty much it for the job management. And I think the last thing I want to show you is because I've created some invoices and some purchase orders, I'm going to go down to the integrations tab, and you'll see here against the integrations tab, it says that I have 5 items that are ready to sync, and that is because I've receipted in some purchase orders, and I have created some invoices. So those are the items that are ready to sync. So if I go back to the integrations tab, you'll see there is a sync button here. If I click that, it'll push over to 0. Or if I click that, it will push over to 0. The other thing I just want to talk about here is also these here. So I have stipulated a supplier's expense account and a contractor's expense account. How does the system know who is a supplier and who is a contractor, so it knows where to send these? And I talked about a hierarchy before, where you could actually adjust these accounts. So what I want to do is go back into this contacts tab here and show you. You'll see in this contacts tab here, I've got my list of contacts. So altogether I have 5 contacts, but out of those 5 contacts, 2 are contractors, 1's an employee, and 2 are suppliers. And this is how Buildxact will know which account to send those items to. So because I've stipulated them when I set them up as being a contractor or a supplier or an employee. So if so that's the first, the first hierarchy. Now the second hierarchy is if I actually go into the contractors or contractor cards, you can see I can click open the contractor's card, and there is a field in here where I can choose a default account. So maybe in this one here, I can go into the default account, and once again it will read all those Buildxact accounts, and I can choose which account that I would like this to go to, and then click save. So you can do that with all your contractors and suppliers. Now the last hierarchy is actually when you're creating a purchase order. So when you are creating a purchase order, you can stipulate at that stage of creation which account that you would like that order to go to. So at the moment, I would have to create a brand new purchase order to show you. But there is a field at the bottom of that purchase order. So just open up that job again, go to purchase orders, click the plus button. Oh, sorry, I apologise. Oh, here it is, sorry, here. Yeah, so at the bottom of this purchase order, you can choose if you want to override what was set up in the contractor or supplier's card. So that's the hierarchy around the accounting. Okay, so just to finish off today, I want to show you where you can go to get more help if you need it. So go into the new Buildxact screen layout. There's an Explore button at the bottom here. And the Explore button, it shows you all our resources. So the first thing you'll see are video tutorials. So if you click on that, it will take you to our video tutorials. Now these will take you through everything you need to know to get up and running with Buildxact. Once you get used to the system, you may have some more advanced queries that you'd like the answers to. Now we have compiled a list of our customers' most frequently asked questions to help you through those more advanced questions that you may have. If you can't find the answers in the videos or the FAQs, that's where you can click on Chat with Us, and there's someone in the support team that's there on hand to help you with any of those queries that you have. Now, the other thing in here is what's new. So keep an eye on this because this is where all our new releases come out. So you'll see there's an indicator there to let you know that there is something new, a new feature that's available. So keep an eye on that. And the other thing is feature suggestions. So you might be saying, look, I wish Buildxact would do this better or add this or enhance this feature. So this is where you can let us know. So what you want to do is go in there and you'll see all our customers' ideas in there. Now, if you find the idea that you've suggested already in there, go ahead and add your vote to it, because the more votes an idea gets, the higher in priority it goes. And if the idea is not in there, then go ahead and add it so that other customers can see it and they can vote on it too. All right, so look, that's pretty much it for the job management module. And what I want to do now is let's have a look at some of those questions that you've got. So what I'm going to do now is hand this over to Dustin.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much. Hey, everybody. Let me just say thank you so much, Karen. It was an absolutely fantastic presentation, and we've got a number of really good questions here. I just wanted to grab a few that seem to be asked a couple different times. The first one here just is relating to markup that you would have done on the variation, and specifically just asking about, would you apply a negative markup for those items that you are giving money back in the variation?
No, because as you noticed, it didn't pick up the markup from the original item. And look, negative markup doesn't really work in the system. So it's not recommended that you do that.
Excellent. Another quick question here, and somebody is just asking about how deputy works when it comes to work orders. I'm just wondering if you can give us just a quick overview of how the deputy integration works.
Yeah, sure. So if we go into the job, again, just bear with me, I'll just get back into that job. What deputy will do is, I'm going to replicate what deputy does, so you don't need to actually monitor any of this. But essentially what deputy will do, it'll create a work order. So I might just say that it's Bob, he's out there with his deputy app and he's applied some hours to a category. So when Bob is out in the field and he has got his deputy app, he opens it up and he opens the job and he can see all the categories within the job. He's going to go into the category where he's doing the labour, and then he'll assign the amount of hours of labour that he's done to that job, to that category. So in essence, I'm just going to replicate what deputy does. So just ignore the step because you don't need to know any of this. You don't need to remember any of this. So let's say Bob is applying 2 hours of labour, and in deputy it would have been set up. His hourly rate would have been set up in the system. So it's going to pull that through. So he's chosen to put it into, he's gone into the bricklayer category, and that's where he's added it. I'm just going to change this to completed, to finalise the process, and just click save and close. So that's what deputy will do. It'll essentially create a work order. So you've got an extra work order in here. And if I go to the actuals costings, once he's pulled that through, that synced deputy has synced with the system, we'll go into the bricklayer section and it will show you at the bottom, it should show you here at the bottom of the field, this is what deputy does. It adds an extra labour line. There's no estimated cost against it, but there is an actual. So every line of labour that is completed will add as an extra line into the section that the technician does in deputy.
Excellent. The next question we have here a few times is people just asking around when you're doing a variation and you turn on the T and you create it as a task. How does that basically work in the schedule? Does it automatically, where does it pop up? Does it change anything? If you could just give us a little bit of an overview of what happens when you click that T button.
Sure. So if I go to the schedule tab, it should have popped up in there. It's probably a bit hard to tell, but essentially what it's going to do, it is going to add as an extra item in the schedule, just the same as hitting the T button in the original estimate.
Perfect. Time for one more question, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. So a few people have just asked a little bit more about when you lock the estimate, what does that actually restrict you from seeing? Like, can you give us a little bit more info in terms of what you can't do on the estimate side anymore?
Yeah, sure. So look, in essence, that estimate is for viewing only. So for instance, if I go into the estimate costings tab, now that I've locked down that job, I can click open these sections. Really, the only thing I can do is hit these P, S, and T buttons on the right. So I can still mark it as a prime cost or a provisional sum. I can still mark it as a spec, and I can still put it on the timeline in the schedule in the job. But you can't really do anything. I could probably reorder them. But in terms of adjusting the costings, you can't really do any of that anymore.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Karen. I see it's 11 o'clock.
Cool. Yeah, cool. Look, there probably are a few more questions in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to collate all those questions, and I will try and touch base with you on those a little bit later. So look, thanks so much for your time today. As I said, we will be recording. We've recorded this webinar for you to look at later. And also for those of you that want to check out the estimating webinar, please do so. We've recorded that as well. All right. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.